Welcome back to Berlin Midnight Meows. I'm Sponge Cake. This is kind of an emergency recording because I was actually editing the next episode. It's basically the second part of the Japan topic, but I just felt like I need to record this episode first because it's a timing to talk about this topic, and at the same time I just feel very emotional reading all these news recently. I have a lot I want to say, and I think maybe it's better to first do this and then we can go back to whatever I was about to share. So, what makes me so emotional is that I've been checking out all the gender related controversies around Olympics, which, by the way, I'm not a big fan of. I am not a big Olympics fan. I used to enjoy watching all the Olympics games when I was little. Not anymore because of different reasons that I will go through them briefly later. I'm feeling so much right now because I've never felt so privileged as a cis woman who always found it difficult to fit in. I'm not the kind of woman that are the very popular kind or the more conventionally attractive kind. I'm not saying this to be a pig me. I am, of course, not the most typical, most stereotypical kind or traditional kind. But after reading all these news about the athletes that are not looking as feminine as many people expect them to be, I've realized I have way more biological advantages than I thought. And this is insane. I always knew that I don't face this kind of structural discrimination that takes away my rights to make certain decisions or to have certain options, like something very basic, for example, getting married, that kind of things. I'm not that group of people. But all these discussions and accusations around all these female athletes that were basically forced or asked to prove that they're women, I was like thinking about it, and of course, I wrote something down. Because growing up, I've been criticized for not being feminine enough, woman enough all the time. For example, in terms of characters, I'm not caring enough. I'm not doing things for men. I'm not going around to like help people around me in a very mother way. I also remember when I was with my ex-husband in Hong Kong. One time we were visiting my parents and having dinner at theirs. And after dinner, I was just sitting on the sofa and my ex was doing the dishes. Not that he volunteered, but I told him to because I was the person that was making money at that time and also doing most of the housework in our own flat. So I was like, yo, my parents told me to do the dishes because I'm the daughter, but you should also give in your parts. We made a deal. He was doing the dishes. I was actually helping a little bit, but then I just like sat on the sofa later. But come on, those days I remember I was working like 13 hours per day to get some projects done, just to free time up for like some other more like private time project I was doing. And he was okay. I mean, he didn't volunteer, but at least he was like, okay, I do it. Also, it looks like this makes your parents happy. And my mom was looking at me sitting on the sofa, be like, wait, like, why aren't you doing the dishes? You're the woman. And of course, I did tell them, like, yo, I've been doing everything at home. Can I have like 2 hours, just like a tiny break from just not even being a woman or what? It's just like it's a division of labor. The fuck. And of course, she wasn't convinced, but I had a deal with my ex, so it's none of her business. So she couldn't go into the kitchen and tell my ex to come out, and I go and replace him. If she could, she probably would have done it. But just saying, this is one of the moments that I seem like a man to them, that I'm just sitting there. And to them, it's okay to be sitting there not doing any housework as a man. They didn't find this problematic or what. This is completely okay. I also didn't cry that much growing up. Counting out the time that I was really beaten up just really badly, my frequency is more or less like 1 to 2 times max per year for many, many years. I'm not saying women in general are proud of crying a lot. That's not the case. I also know people who don't really want to cry, but they cry all the time. It's like a biological thing. It's like after you drink water, liquid, you are just gonna pee. It's that natural. It's like a mix of biological and psychological thing. I'm not judging others for crying a lot now, but I didn't know how to handle when my female friends were crying around me. As a kid, I was always looking around at my classmates or other friends when there's someone crying in the classroom. How do you people react, especially the girls? Because I felt like as a boy, that's my observation back then. As a boy, you could totally just sit there still on your own chair without doing anything, and no one would be feeling like, why are you so cold? You are not expected to do anything about this crying situation. I never take the boys as a reference. So I was always trying to look at the girls and trying to imitate how a woman would react, but I would still find it very awkward. But deep down, I know, because that's probably what my mom would told me, and she did several times. Like, you have to act like a woman more. Like, how can you be so cold? How can you not do anything? How can you not like go and comfort the person with some like nice, like to say something nice about it, like oh, like that. I couldn't really do it, and there has been a long time I've been thinking like, am I misogynist that I just hate crying women and I hate doing this kind of so-called caring things, or I'm a bit autistic? I mean, I'm actually indeed looking into this. I'm working with my therapist to find out if I'm really autistic. Of course, now I am old enough to learn. I gather enough information from people around me, enough data to know how to be a more socially accepted woman in this kind of situations, even though a lot of times I don't really want to. If you ask me honestly, I would love to have someone handle this. So if another person is handling this kind of situations very well, like comforting a person, I would rather just like, yeah, not engage. Like I'm the person that would be comfortable with, for example, giving the crying person a tissue or bringing what they need. If someone get themselves injured, I'm super happy to bring them something to stop the bleeding or so. Like this kind of practical things I always love to do. But then when it comes to this kind of more emotional support and not the talking kind, like, not this kind of analytical kind that you talk about why and give advice. If it's not this, I am really not good at. And yeah, well, I'm trying. But here's something I later found super unfair. I don't think men were under the same pressure as women when they are not giving in any emotional labor. When it's needed, also, I'm sure the boys that were, let's say, exactly having the same thoughts as me that many years ago as a kid, they wouldn't feel the same urge as me to always like look around and try to act as caring as possible so you don't get scolded by anyone. I don't think so. Yeah, and all these expectations, I always found them very hard to meet. But at the same time, I think I managed to meet many of them after putting in a lot of time, effort, and like learning. But yeah, my mom always said this. She always said, "You're like a boy. Why don't you like flowers?" When she's like outside appreciating how pretty all these flowers are, how colorful they are, and took a lot of pictures of them. I was always standing there like a I want to say robot, but not even that. It's more like a piece of wood, like a tree. I was like a tree just behind her, looking at her, doing all these things that I totally couldn't relate. And she always said, "Why don't you like these things? And what about the babies?" That's also another big problem in her eyes. Because growing up, I never liked babies. Because my friends, again, not shitting on them, because I think it's great that they felt this naturally. But whenever there were babies around or like this kind of small kids around, and I'm talking about when I was like 15 to 18, that time, as a group of high school girls, when we walk around and bump into some tiny kids or babies, my female friends, they would always be very excited and then also like talk to the kids or babies and like touch with, of course, the mother's permission. So they always enjoy this. And I again stood behind like a fucking piece of wood. And sometimes because it was so negatively outstanding, I also try to touch the baby, squeezing the baby's cheeks a little bit just to fit in like this. My mom also asked me all the time, like, "Don't you feel anything for the babies? They are so cute." I really asked myself, not really. And I was so uncomfortable when I was forced to touch and talk the baby language. Now I also, again, learned how to do this. I do sometimes try to appear happier or more excited when I see, for example, my colleagues' babies and kids, even though deep down, if you ask me, I don't feel anything. But in order to not make things awkward, you don't really know your colleagues super well, that you have a lot of trust, that I felt okay to do something weird, awkward, not that socially accepted. So it's also good that I don't stick out in this kind of situations. I've got way better at pretending that I like babies, or at least I don't hate them. At least I respect them. Let's put it like this. I don't think I wanna act like I love babies. My goal is just that I can look a bit more comfortable around babies when I cannot dodge this. So a lot of behavioral things or preferences didn't really fit the imagination of like many people, even like of other women. I was always considered not feminine enough. And now, at least for the look, I changed a lot because I also used to be more the tomboy type, that I had short hair, but not the cool bob, like no, just short hair. But not like the super boyish kind. I think it's more androgynous because I have a very round face. As a teenager, I always wanted to cover as much as possible. I mean, now I still choose the hairstyles that can frame my round face better. But back then, it was just not so much aesthetical considerations. It was just purely very practically, I wanted short hair, but I don't want to show my round face so much. Also, the rectangular glasses, that's a must have for 15 years ago in most East Asian countries. This kind of t-shirt, short pants a lot because I also found myself quite chubby. So I always wanted to wear big clothes. sometimes I wore something a bit more feminine, but it was probably just like longer t-shirt that was in pink, but never like skirts, because I was really embarrassed by the idea of me, such a weird looking, like a boy girl, wearing so feminine clothing. So never thought of this. I'm just not like, this kind of very popular tomboys that they would be very good at basketball. I remember there was a girl like this, and she was pretty popular around other girls. So when I saw one of the athletes in the center of this gender accusation, or like trans accusation, just like people calling her trans, but apparently she is not, because I really like went down the rabbit hole to watch all of her videos, and I saw this video when she was 18. They pretty much follow her and her family and did like a tiny documentary thing. And she was already an elite athlete, elite boxing athlete. She had almost the same type of look I had back then when I was also around that age. And she's only 1 year younger than me. I was like, why would people just think that because you're like this and this and this, then you are a man? I mean, of course, she doesn't have that feminine look, but I also imagine when you are an athlete, then your muscle amounts, everything is just very different from regular women, but also regular men, even. That's also a type of woman that exists. I was also part of them, but if you ask me, I just didn't really have the physical condition to be like her type, like this kind of tall, skinny type. I remember as a teenager also always had a lot of fantasy about me being this kind of quiet, cool, boyish girl that you cannot tell whether I'm a boy or a girl. And for me, that was a super cool thing for a girl to do. So I would probably find her super cool at that time. And I also wasn't brave enough to go more the masculine direction because I had very strict parents, especially my mom. She wasn't just strict about my academic performance, but also always trying to punish me or criticize me whenever I deviated from her ideas of an ideal girl image. So I also couldn't go that far. Sometimes I still try to conform. Sometimes I try to play around a little bit, like the gray zone and stuff. But yeah, looking at the female boxers that were accused of basically pretending or lying about being a man, I felt so sad, like for real, because I was like really looking at the picture when they were younger. I'm very different from how they look now. We are very different kinds of women, just from the, like, in terms of appearance now. But looking back, I can relate. I've been there. Of course, there are women that are more like me who had this time of being more boyish because of all kinds of insecurities and just still trying to find your identity, the visual styles you like, and how to be yourself. You know, you went through this phase. And then later we started to get along with all these like feminine elements that we used to hate. For example, I just got a new set of pink keyboard and mouse, and I enjoy. I cannot imagine this. 15 years ago, I hated pink so much because I thought it was so girly. It's that type of girls. So I hated it so much. But honestly, if you think about it, of course, there are cultural stereotypes about this color, but this color itself, it doesn't have a gender. So yeah, now I'm fine with this. I'm totally fine wearing skirts because I like how I look in them. I wear very feminine clothing, more feminine than the people I found back then more feminine than me, way more feminine than me, that I was looking at them like I was a boy and oh wow, they are so girls. And then have this kind of love-hate feelings towards them. Like on one hand, actually deep down a bit envious. On the other hand, also like, what is this? I have no problems with these now. But at the same time, there are also women that were like me back then. It's kind of more the boyish, masculine type of women. But later they realized that's just them. They love it and they got more and more comfortable with it. And like, even I'm sure people still judge them, but they are just more confident in this kind of look and this kind of unconventional looks. So they've just been sticking to this all the time. Not to mention there are women that had always been very feminine growing up, but later realized they actually wouldn't want to be like this anymore and change their image, threw away all the dress, skirts, whatever, and only wearing pants and have a more androgynous image than when they were young. This kind of cases also exist. And what I'm trying to say is, when we say women, we always like to imagine it like a group of very homogenous people. But no, it's not. Like we're all individual humans that we might share a lot of similarities, especially biologically, but it's also not necessarily true all the time that we are the same on everything. We have to be looking the same as each other because this is just not true. This is impossible. Even if you compare two this kind of Lolita style girls, one would be taller and the other one would be shorter, or one would have bigger feet and the other one have super tiny feet. And that already creates really different life experiences for them separately. Something I find quite dangerous because, of course, nowadays we talk so much about girl power, women power, girls help girls. But a lot of times there's a lot of hostility in this kind of movement because it's about, again, creating different circles in this big group of women that if you don't fit some women's definition of a woman, then girls might not help girls. This is so sad also because I know many women started this kind of groups or campaigns because they were harmed by men. They've also become very defensive against basically people that are not women. But how do we define women? After reading all these things in the last 2-3 days, I'm just thinking, how much do you need to do or what do you need to have to be qualified for being a woman? Like, if you think about this, it's insane. It's like we need to get a certificate to be a woman, to be a gender. Honestly, this also a lot of times has very little to do with other people. Why does it matter to the others so much? I understand there are some basic things you might want to know, like medical records. For a lot of bureaucracy, you just need to clarify your gender. But once you tell them, why is it not enough? When you show them your ID, they can still question you further. You can have shitloads of proof and almost pull down your panties, but still you don't get this paper, this certificate of I am a woman. This blew my mind. People like to talk about science, but when you pull out some scientific evidence, they still try to question you. They question you further and further to a point that is not reasonable anymore. Even if you pull down your pants, you show your genitals. Does it necessarily prove that you are biologically, genetically, perfectly a woman? No, it doesn't. There's no ending. It's not even like coming back to Olympics. It's not like you finish that round and you're done, you have to keep running. And it's not a marathon. You can really see there's not like a universal set of like standards that until I show you this, you have to say, I'm a woman. It's a lot of things we're talking about here. If I look back to what I experienced or what I heard others experienced, there are so many things that people could question if you're a woman, or they know you're a woman, but they don't want to agree on this. For example, you're not skinny enough. They know you're a woman, but they would say, like, you're heavier than a man. Actually, my mom said this to me a lot because my dad had always been really skinny, 58, 9 kilogram at some point. There was a time I was almost his weight. As a woman, you must always be slimmer or lighter than a man, which makes no sense, right? My waist size was at some point also a little bit bigger or almost the same as my dad's. So she again said this, like, oh, you're like as wide as a man. It's like you're not fitting, this checklist of this species of women. You should ask yourself, why are you not ticking these boxes? Of course, you wouldn't ask me to do a DNA test or question, oh, do you have a penis down there? No, she would never do this. But then at the same time, she's still questioning, why are you not so woman? I also remember one time I was trying out like some new bra somewhere. There were many years I didn't wear this kind of bras, which back then was not a work thing. It was more like my mom, how to say, I don't think she entirely stigmatized girls wearing bras. She just kept saying like, it's an adult thing. Oh, okay, let me put it like this. I think she kind of related young girls already wearing this kind of bras, but not just the underwear without any pads, just basically like a tank top. She related this kind of girls to sluts. Wait, you're only 14. Why are you wearing so adult stuff and so revealing? And so she always told me to wear this kind of tank tops, basically, like sometimes a bit thicker, but still very thin. And it was Hong Kong 15, 20 years ago. I didn't want to show my nipple shape. What the fuck? I don't want to have two pointy nipples there. It's super embarrassing because, yeah, like your body started to grow and you're looking different. You don't have that flat chest anymore. Slowly, they are showing. I was quite anxious. Why are they sometimes so visible? But yeah, she definitely tried to talk me out. And I mean, there's no talking. It wasn't a negotiation. It was just her not buying me the kind of thicker underwears. But again, she was not doing this because she was woke or like she thinks it's okay to show your pointy nipples. She would also shame you for that. She just thought if you're 14, 15, you shouldn't wear bras. So I had like several years just always trying to bend my back a little bit so I don't really show my chest so much. And that was terrible. Yeah. Actually, if you give me now the underwears from that time, that kind of tank top, not really bras, I wouldn't mind, it's kind of comfortable. But it's now, not 15 years ago when I just wanted to wear what others were wearing. Coming back to the shopping experience, we were in mainland China with my aunts and grandma. I was trying my new bras in the fitting room. Even though I didn't want to, I didn't feel comfortable. Again, I had to show them how those bras looked on me, right? I came out and then show my aunts and my mom and my grandma a little bit how I look. And I forgot what they said already. I forgot whether we bought those bras already. And what I remember was only that after I closed the door of the fitting room, they started to talk about my body, my boob size, because my mom was like, she was like browsing elsewhere. They said something like, oh, she had so tiny boobs like her mom in a sad, pity tone. I remember it so vividly, also because it was a shock for me, because my mom had been slut shaming me, right? That I always felt bad to even had some boobs because that would mean I'm showing them. So to me back then, the standards that was used on me was smaller chest would be better. Then I realized suddenly, like, oh, I've entered the adult world and they have a whole new set of standards, including bigger boobs would be better. I had a very complicated feeling, and that was already when I was a little bit older. To be honest, I never wanted to have bigger boobs. I don't think I have any insecurities about this. So, what they said didn't leave a direct impact on my aesthetics. I still prefer myself in my current size. So, that's okay. After overhearing this conversation, I was thinking about it the whole day. I didn't expect this opinion. I was always pressured by like the other side. I think it was just like eye opening on one hand, but on the other hand, of course, probably hurts because why suddenly something is wrong again? Whatever I do or however I am, I mean, this kind of things are not what I can choose, right? They also said it in a way to, again, not entirely saying, oh, she's such a man, but I could sense a little bit of this smaller chest makes her less sexually attractive as a woman and make her look a bit more like a man. It's more like on the spectrum. Let's put like very simply women and men on both sides. And what they said was basically pushing me from somewhere closer to woman to one block closer to man. I actually have PCOS. I'm not a doctor nor a medical student. I'm not that kind of perfect kids that make their parents happy by being a doctor or lawyer. I'm going to put it like more from the patient's perspective. Because of this, I've been having very irregular period. And I also got my first period super, super late. Until 17 or so, I still barely had any period. And I'm talking about maybe once a year only. Until 15, I didn't even have anything. So, of course, my mom was very worried. I was taken to so many gynecologists. You cannot imagine how many. It's like, of course, the Western kind, but also the Chinese medicine kind. I took all kinds of medication. Some also gave me really bad side effects because it's all hormone regulating pills. They could be quite intense. I remember doing a listening test. So obviously, if you get distracted, you will lose everything, right? Suddenly, I had like a just like very strong dizziness just really attacking me. Like suddenly it was so dizzy that I almost fainted. And that was after I took this pills from one of the doctors that seemed very concerned, and she obviously prescribed some pretty tough pretty strong drugs for me. I always told like people here that's why I'm not so into drugs, because growing up I have taken a lot of different kinds of drugs for medical treatment. This whole experience visiting different gynecologists also made me again reflect a lot on women body. My mom, of course, she was so concerned because this is about my fertility. She's worried that I won't be able to give birth because yes, PCOS does have some kind of correlation to fertility, but it's actually not that direct. PCOS is not necessarily reducing your fertility. That's not how it works, as I vaguely remember. Sometimes you could be completely fertile as a PCOS patient, but because your period could be a bit more irregular and stuff, it could be harder for you to be impregnated. There are things like this, but it's not as critical as many other disorders or disease, illness, or having a different biological structure. Many PCOS patients can give birth, and they did. It's a mild thing for some people, but it could also be quite serious to some people. This is not just about fertility, it's also about health. And many people tend to forget about this, that they always just focus on, oh, as a woman, can you give birth? Can your body make babies? Because that's your body's job. But come on, we also need to be healthy. We have so many other things to do apart from giving birth. It's such a weird phenomenon because when you go to gynecologists, many of them, they are really, they're traditional. Many of them are very traditional people. And sometimes because of this, the conversations can get really off. As a teenage girl, that was not of course, I wasn't planning to give birth next month or next year. I was even a virgin, so there was no sex life at all. But then everyone around me, especially my mom, was only paying attention to my fertility. And what I concerned was more like, for many people, PCOS, it does affect your daily life. For example, many could have extra body hair. Some might suffer from just having really bad skin, like pimples and stuff everywhere. And that's, again, by the way, it's raining, so there's this noise in the background. I'm gonna try to clean them in post-production, but I'm not sure if I can clean all of them. But I guess it's a little bit romantic to talk about this on a rainy day. Yeah, and some other symptoms include drastic weight gain, also baldness. So there are a lot of things. Of course, it's not as harmful as many more serious disease or health conditions, but definitely it does impact your daily life, even if you don't want to have a kid. After consulting so many gynecologists, visiting them, and sometimes, especially the Chinese medicine kind, I even had to be recommended to them through some kind of connection. So there was a lot of work. I was also, just like always wearing my backpack, going back to mainland China, to Guangzhou, to visit those famous doctors that my relatives and my parents arranged for me. A lot of times, very bad experience, honestly, because all the time they're just judging you a lot, just lecturing you, telling you a lot of traditional values that has nothing to do with medicine or science. For example, I was actually not allowed to drink cold water and eat ice cream for a year or two because one of the gynecologists told my mom you shouldn't let her drink any cold things. That's a Chinese medicine belief that you need to keep the body, female body, warm to preserve the fertility and also keep her healthy. Which, sometimes people argue, yeah, indeed, it's true, la la la. But I don't really believe in it. Sorry, because after I moved out from my parents' home, I've been drinking cold bubble tea, eating all kinds of ice cream, all the cold stuff. But my conditions actually got better, way better when I was only 15, 16. There's also a hypothesis some gynecologists had that maybe your body was just developing. But because, people always care about women's body, they always pay so much attention to it. So yeah, they couldn't even just give you some time. They couldn't just give your body some time to develop, which is kind of legit because in some cultures, when you're 14, 15, you're already at the age of a mom. So of course they're concerned, but that obviously wasn't my case. Yeah, they told my mom this kind of things. And of course, all the time the reasons was because we want to prevent that she lose her fertility at some point, and she has this condition. So we need to be extra careful. And they also sometimes ask, overly intimate questions, just way too private that I was always looking back like, was that necessary? For example, they ask a lot about your sex life, details. And of course, a lot of gynecologists also told me that you will have a child at some point. So you should do everything to protect your body, to prepare yourself for that in the future. There was a German gynecologist I visited here. I was older already, obviously. I was there just for my health because she kept talking about fertility, Lala. I stopped her and said, at the moment, I don't plan to have a child. And if you ask me, honestly, probably not even in the future. She asked me, then why are you here? Well, I have this PCOS condition, and I was told that I should always have a checkup from time to time to just monitor how does it develop and just have everything in control. And she's like, well, if you're not planning to be pregnant, I don't see the point of you coming here to see me. And obviously she was like, you wasting my time. And she was a specialist for PCOS. I was very pissed. I even left a Google review. This medical corporation or like chain, they wanted to sue me. Like I got a letter from their lawyer threatening me. You're not even our patient. Take it down or we're gonna sue you. And guess what? Of course, they didn't sue me because I was indeed there. Also many times getting always insulted by this fucking bitch. In German, I try to be nice and, being a good immigrant. So I was talking all the time in German with her. Gynecologists, that's a specific kind of doctors that are supposed to help women. I think many of them ended up becoming the enemies, shaming you for whatever reasons. And you are so vulnerable in front of them. Sometimes you're naked, you're showing everything. I'm sure many people are not even like me. Like maybe they have something that look a bit different from, let's say, the most average women. I really can't imagine how little social responsibility these gynecologists have towards their patients, especially when they have so much power and so much influence over women's life and women's well-being, literally. And it's not just biological, it's also mentally. I also heard a lot of people coming out from the gynecologist clinic or the office and be super devastated because of how they phrase their diagnosis or how they make unnecessary judgments or how they ask super intrusive questions. And I'm saying all these to express, as a cis woman with kind of average, stereotypical, physiological characteristics, even I never found it easy to be woman enough. When you have boobs, they say they're not big enough. When you have a vagina, they say the shape isn't completely right. Wait, your shoulders are so wide, that's a bit suspicious. They can always say something about you. I do have a vagina. I am fertile, actually. So me saying I don't want to have a kid, that's my choice. It's not like I'm forced to accept this. Even though my body isn't that perfect, like I do have some kind of disorders, I can still give birth whenever I wish. There are so many chances to fail in the process. But just saying, I do have the basic setup that if I want, I can start the process. My body, it changes from time to time. My size also fluctuates all the time. But I can always find something from the mainstream brands out there. It's not like, oh, my boobs are way too big that I need to go to some special brands. I'm not plus size either. And I'm also not the XXXS that I also know. This group of people also exist and they get overlooked all the time. Regular sizes, the S, M, L are way too big for them. So yeah, it took me some time to find my styles and such. now I actually find it quite easy to find what I want to wear, and I can put it on my body and they fit not always perfectly, but it's okay. They fit. I, even though don't have that kind of curvy body or the supermodel bodies that media would praise so much or make my body the standard, the beauty standard. My body is very regular, not outstanding in any ways, but at least no one question I don't have a woman body enough that they can distinguish me and more stereotypical man that they can tell with full confidence this is a woman. This also gets extended to when I walk into a woman toilet or any women only spaces. No one is gonna come up to me and be like, yo, can I check your ID? No, that's never happened to me. When strangers call me, want to address me, they always just shoot, miss something, Frau something in German, and same in Chinese, like Cantonese, Mandarin. Never hesitated. They immediately know because I'm just obviously, in their eyes, a woman. My voice, that what you are hearing, listening at the moment, it's very easy to categorize this voice as a woman voice. No one ever had problem with this. This voice could also be a trans woman or a non-binary's voice, whatever. But no one would be like, I cannot tell whether she is a man. Maybe she's a man. No one would think like this. It's very safe. It's easy. It's a no-brainer. And I'm not just a cis woman. I'm also a straight woman. Even though I mentioned, I'm also imagining dating other genders. Hypothetically speaking, I do feel like that doesn't really matter to me so much. It's more the characters, the thoughts, like the brain, everything. But to me, I'm just curious. But if I have to be straight my whole life, if I can only date straight men my whole life, I can only have sex with straight men my whole life, this is also fine with me. If I could experience, if I could explore, that would be great. If not, I'm not a spoiled kid. I'm fine. I'm fine. But I don't have my needs getting limited or banned or forbidden by law, cultures, whatever. Yes, it's not comparable to people who have no choice, always experience this kind of hesitance from other people, from strangers, from even friends, from all the people around you who see you on the streets. Honestly, today, after all these discussions, and of course I know some trans people in real life and also a lot of women that are not that stereotypical, that made me realize how easy my life is compared to theirs. Of course, I knew, but now more specifically, I know what kind of advantages and privilege I'm enjoying. I just want to share this because I know being a cis woman is also not always easy, but sometimes we might forget about our privilege. And there are so many marginalized people out there fighting for something super basics that we were born with. Could also be the women that were born without all the typical or like average physiological characteristics. Again, coming back to the fact that you have a vagina does not mean everything. I feel like we often forgot about this, and that's why when we think of women, there is this image in your head, this long hair, visible boobs, and then like a curvy body, not so wide frame, not too tall. You have this one single projection in your head, which is just not true. It doesn't represent so many fucking women. Yeah, I've already talked so damn fucking much. I'm just in the mood today. As I said, I feel very emotional. There are just a lot of things I saw. I feel like, yeah, it brought me back to that moment in my life, or like that friend I know. I also mentioned a trans woman before, like in one of my first episodes. She's not here anymore. Yeah, she passed away already. I also learned something from her. I've always been learning, and I think everyone should keep learning, including myself. It takes time for you to understand everything, right? Especially this gender topic, it's like an onion. So many layers. You have to first peel off the top layers to get to the core. The more you peel, the more you see, oh, there's more inside, there's more inside. And you also gain different perspectives that actually maybe you knew this before, but you didn't think about it this way. I have an example here. I never had problems supporting trans, like because I know some people they found them too different from themselves. Actually, for all kinds of genders, because I know women like this, I also know men like this. They just found them too foreign, so they didn't support them at the beginning. But later, as they got to know some of them in person or like read about them, watch some documentaries about them, they started to understand them and became also allies. But in my case, I've always supported trans to be treated as they wish. So I never had problem with this. But slowly I had developed feelings about trans women, especially trying to reinforce certain stereotypes around women. They always try to wear the most feminine clothing, but honestly, you don't have to wear a skirt to be a woman. I haven't seen so many trans women that are wearing, like, for example, actually the more mainstream clothing nowadays, jeans, pants, and t-shirt, that kind of stuff. I struggle to find this diversity in the trans women group. A lot of competition about appearance in the circle. And if it's not perfect enough, you even get judged by your own people that other trans women think you're not good looking enough or you're not women looking enough. I heard about this. It's very biological, right? Some people, they are lucky that they were born with a smaller frame, so maybe it made it easier for them to wear certain clothes, and some just weren't. I felt like it's sad that for trans women, if you're not perfect enough, if you're not stereotypical enough and look alike enough to this most stereotypical kind of women, then you're a little bit disqualified. There would still be this kind of competitions between them and so much news insecurities that now they want to be better and better and better. So I did have a lot of problems about this, to be honest. But then now I got to know a little bit more about their daily struggles and I try to think in their shoes. I've developed a little bit more understanding of their daily challenges and can empathize a little bit more why, for example, the pursuits for the stereotypical looks or so, because I was judging them as a cis woman. My challenges are very different from their challenges. For many of them, their worries are really, for example, like, will I be called out if I enter the women toilets? So I totally understand the obsession about appearance because this affects their daily life. They would already need to explain so damn fucking much, even when they wear dresses, some princess dresses, and wear makeup, long hair. How can they even think of, like, for cis women, we can have short hair or wear some boyish clothes or so and never get questioned. If your look is quote unquote safe enough, you will never have problem. You could, of course, explore all these different styles and stuff. But for them, it's a very different set of concerns, challenges, worries that you cannot just take the cis woman struggle and just throw it on them. It doesn't make sense at all. We have very different goals as well because I think many of us, we never had problems about gender identities. many of us have more capacity to just swing from the more masculine side to the more feminine side, because we have the capacity to explore all these things and possibilities. But for trans women, I mean trans men as well, the first things that empower them on a daily basis is everything about their appearance. It's not it's not like me choosing today should I wear pants to look a little bit more boyish, like I do the street style, or I want to wear the vintage skirts because today I'm feeling girly. I totally forgot my privilege when I think like this, like, oh, you're a woman now, so you should also contribute something to feminism, to expand people's imagination of women. Like, let's do this together. Looking back a little bit inconsiderate, but I don't really blame myself because yeah, because we all couldn't know everything from the start. So I'm open to learning more. Apart from genders, I also want to briefly talk about Olympics. Yeah, it's everywhere. It's really everywhere. Especially in my online circle, everyone has been talking about it like since last week or so. I used to be a big fan, but as I know more now, again, I have more awareness. I realize how actually itself, like Olympics itself, is probably not that bad. It's just a lot of sport events and games that people compete. Competition could also be positive and good and empowering. I don't think competitions are necessarily toxic if you do it right and have a right attitude. But of course, in practice, Olympics is about elitism. And for many countries, once you are a medalist, you always have to win the next competition. Otherwise, they hate you, they leave you. This very dramatic love and hate thing, it's a part of humanity I don't like. You win or you nothing. I'm just like, can we be a little bit more in the middle? It's not your own achievement. Like, that's my opinion because I know many people wouldn't agree. It's not your own achievement. It's an elite athlete's achievement. So when they win, you can be happy for them. Fine, I totally understand. But when they are not doing fine, which is completely normal because they are humans. So sometimes they have better performance, sometimes have less good performance. I don't think they can have very bad performance, honestly, if they made it to Olympics. Then just give them room and why hate them? It's their competition, it's not yours. And they don't owe you anything, honestly. And on the other hand, no one gives a shit if you just participated in Olympics and didn't win anything. If you can't even make it there as an athlete, in many countries, people have zero respect for you. What are you? What do you do to the economy? What's your contribution? What's your economic contribution? Like Asia, on one hand, Asian countries are really good at sports. Well, I don't mean the regular people. I just mean in this kind of competitions because it's elitism everywhere that even though people on the street, they are not as sporty as people in Europe, but we have way more elite athletes that got so many medals. And that's exactly the reason because there's more motivation, also more pressure because the athletes know if they don't win something, they're nothing. I don't really want to exclude the European countries or even the US from this because, yeah, elitism is everywhere. Different levels in different countries, but it's still there. Just imagine you're a low tier athlete in the US or I don't know, in any European countries. You have no business value, then you don't get any sponsorship. You can't even support your career. Very soon you have to retire, you have to change your job, you have to do something else. It's a fucking shame. It's all capitalism deep down, and that just shows how hypocritical people are when they talk about like the spirits of Olympics. I'm like, no, it's just pure elitism. yeah, like you win, then yes, there's spirit for you. If you lose, then fuck off, go home. Why even waste the country's money to get your ticket to get there? The fuck? Yeah, and of course, politics. Yeah, I'm also like tired looking at this, even though I know for many countries in special or complicated political situations, oftentimes the people from those countries develop some kind of sentiments. They relate a lot to the athletes and they feel so strong when they lose or win. And that's why they are extra proud when they win and extra disappointed when it doesn't have to be losing. It could also be a gold medalist not meeting certain expectations people have. But if you are athletes from these countries, places, you are under a microscope. Everyone is looking what you do, what you say, not to mention broader scale politics. You know, I saw this picture of North Korean and South Korean athletes taking a selfie together. Media outlets all frame this as, see, it's sports, it's Olympics. No matter what the reality is, we can be friends here. We could be like rivals, but in a good way. I mean, coming back, you still have to face this, right? These people always like to sugarcoat the actual political tension between certain countries. And what about the countries that have a war, ongoing war? It's not like you shake hands and then it's great. You know, it's not. And I'm not saying you cannot celebrate. It's just like, calm your fucking shit down. I just think in the end, of course, at the beginning, people started with, oh, we're in the same world together. We are there to showcase diversity, different cultures. And now halfway through, I'm just passively getting all these information. And I also read a little bit further, you know, it's a bad old Olympics. You have hostility everywhere. There could always be some kind of problems. But a lot of times it's also just sentiment that people don't want to accept that their country lost. Even for the countries that won, it's not gonna be always positive because the people are gonna like mock the countries that lost or maybe say some very nationalistic stuff or being super racist. If a white athlete is playing against a POC athlete, no matter who wins, who lose, still can be a lot of racism shit. I really cannot enjoy Olympics, and yeah, I do like to talk about it. And I watch some clips online myself. I'm just not posting like, yo, my country won. Yeah, I'm not doing this. And I also cheer for athletes from other countries as long as they're good. Crazy. I said it's an emergency recording, a spontaneous one. I didn't plan this, but I talk so fucking much. I'm very tired now, but I am very happy about this episode actually. And I try to use the most appropriate wordings, but don't hate me if I somehow misuse some tiny, like if I use certain words incorrectly or just not as perfect. It was probably a mistake or I just didn't have the knowledge and information yet. So then write me and let me know, teach me about this. Okay, yeah, that's all of this episode. Oh my god, I'm so fucking tired. And it was raining and now sunny again. Yeah, welcome to Berlin. Yes, so I wish you all a nice evening. That's all for this episode. Bye for now.